Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Baumgarten, but I expect you already know that. And I welcome you to this latest edition of the Gary Baumgarten Report, which is really only a test. This is a test. If it had been an actual alert, we would be hitting the panic button. Joining me is Boaz Franco, my buddy and producer and technical advisor, helping me with this test. And the reason I am doing this is because I am now, and the last one failed, but I am now on my iPhone. And the whole idea is I want to be able to interview people in the field. And I would take the iPhone with me into the field to do the interviews. And so that's why we're doing this test. And I'm using Restream, and it takes a little bit of time to get used to all the differences between doing it on my laptop and using the iPhone. But before we get into any substance, for those of you who are kind enough to be watching us at almost 1 a.m. Eastern time, boys, how does it sound and look to you?
Very good, Gary. Good video, good audio.
I agree, coming from you as well. I was saying, although nobody heard me on the first test, that I thought I would use this as an opportunity to give a little preview of what's going to be coming up this week in the news. And without question, it's going to be the new variant, the Omicron variant of the COVID-19, which sounds awfully scary. And I guess we'll be talking this week about how we as individual nations and as a global community can best prepare ourselves and try to prevent its spread. But it's already detected in North America, in Canada, and the borders are now reopened between Canada and the United States. So I suspect it won't be long before it is detected here in the United States. It may already be here.
It's entirely possible. And from what I've been reading, this newest variant of COVID-19, and I'll pronounce it the way you did because I'm not really sure, Omicron. This variant also has somewhat different, I guess you could say, different characteristics when a person gets sick. They named a couple of which I don't quite remember right now, but most importantly, what they do know, at least from the little bit of information that we do have, is that it is very, very resistant to the COVID-19 vaccine. And this poses it kind of like bring us back almost to square one to where we were when COVID-19 first came out. I don't think that there's going to be a rush on this, on all the stores to buy masks. I don't think we'll have a shortage of any of that stuff because people are pretty well stocked up by now. And production has already prepared for that. But I do think that where it's going to affect us, Gary, is in the restrictions that will be decided in the near future as to how we can behave in public, meaning going out, where to wear a mask, about people who are vaccinated, that are not vaccinated, and of course, there's going to be talk, of course, about the talk a little bit more about the booster shot and how that is going to play at all with this new variant.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I know from what I've read that the various purveyors of the current shots are working very hard already to find a way to adapt them to this new variant. But I've also read, and there are always going to be variants. But in this case, there are so many mutations, which is highly unusual, they say, the scientists say, that it's become daunting and perplexing. And I don't know what human behavior is going to be as a result of this, because we all went through the lockdown. There was a lot of compliance in the beginning. Now there's this huge debate over the various mandates that are in place or are being proposed. There's a goodly number of people in our society who object to any mandates, and they say that it's a matter of choice. And so I don't know if we get to the point where they clamp down again, whether people will be as compliant this time as they were the last time.
Well, here's what I've been reading. What's going on in Europe? I think you've heard there are there are mass demonstrations in Europe right now, in some of the major countries there, Germany, Italy, I think it's Switzerland also, because of that they're talking about getting ready to do a lockdown. Israel, which the whole world follows when it comes to COVID-19 and their results, they have already stated, and it's all over the news networks, that they have already stated that they're locking down the whole country again. Nobody is allowed in the country at this moment. They've already made that statement. And any returning Israelis will have to go into quarantine for 2 weeks. So all these restrictions are coming back now.
Right. The problem with putting in restrictions, of course, it's like closing the barn door after the livestock is out of the barn to some degree. And there's got to be a way to respond more quickly than we are. And it doesn't take but one person traveling from South Africa to Los Angeles, where you are, or New York, where I am, to start spreading this new variant. And if one person has it, they can spread it to two can spread it to four, and so forth and so on. And the next thing you know, it becomes a real public health issue and also an economic issue, because we've seen what the first COVID and then the variant, the Delta, has done to the economy. And I think there's probably a goodly number of people who say, yeah, this is going to be bad, or this is bad when it happens, but we have to keep the economy going. And I actually can understand, whether I agree with their point of view, I can respect and understand their point of view. If I owned a small business that barely made it through the first lockdown, I'm going to be hopping mad about the second lockdown, because, okay, it's a business, but that business translates into my livelihood, my ability, if I own one, to provide for my family. And that's, a basic instinct that we all have of providing and survival.
Gary, we've gone through this interesting, well, I guess you could say there are other ways to describe it, but I'll just say this interesting phase of the balance between how many restrictions you put on the public versus the negative outcome of those restrictions. Of course, there's a positive outcome, and there's a reason for the restrictions, so that the virus does not spread. Because if the virus spreads, it's not going to matter how many restrictions there are, and nobody's going to be able to go to work, and the economy will bottom out. So there needs to that nobody really knows the where that fine line is. Where's that golden path? Nobody knows that. And basically what we're doing is we're throwing all these restrictions at the public, and then we're waiting for the results to come back. And when the results come back, then we start to, easing up on the restrictions. But that is a very crude way of handling the situation. There has to be more insight and thought into such a situation that we are in, especially when we've already gone through one winter. Because if you remember, Gary, when COVID first came out and we were going into the first winter, they said this is going to be a tough winter for the hospitals, for ER, or for whatnot. Now, we've gone through that one winter and we've learned, you would think that we have learned from it in order to plan for it better. But I don't see any planning, to be honest with you. So I don't know.
Well, one thing I pray and hope is that everybody's woken up to the fact that if it comes to the point where hospitals are so overwhelmed that they can't handle all the patients, they don't take COVID patients and put them into nursing homes. I don't think that's going to be acceptable any longer. And shame on anybody who does that now in the future.
You know, when it comes to the nursing homes, we've gone full cycle with the nursing homes when we went through the first winter, and it was terrible. Many old folks died, as we know, and a good amount of nursing home staff also that got infected. They also died and got sick and whatnot. Um, and I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can figure when we're talking specifically about the nursing homes and what we can do in this next cycle, because when we talk about cycles, we're talking about going into the winter, and that's when things get worse. So I don't know of what we're going to do with this cycle, other than, well, I hate to say it, but lock everything down. What choice do you have? Now, you don't go visit mama and papa that are in the old age home for a couple of months. That's just the way it has to be.
Just horrible people dying alone and their family not being able to be with them.
Yes, that's true.
I pray that we don't get to that point again. I'm hoping that the scientists, either in the public universities or at these pharmaceutical companies, come up with a solution to this variant. But even if they do, how many more shots are we going to have to take for various variants that don't resist the latest inoculations that we have had? And, pretty soon we're all going to be walking around like heroin junkies with holes in our in our arms from all the shots that we have to take. I guess we have to do what we have to do, but it's not the kind of future that I hope for me, my children, and my grandchildren.
Well, when you talk about the vaccination, let's take for example the example of the excuse me, the standard flu shot that is offered once a year, before flu season. Now that particular vaccination includes several different flu. How do you call it? I forget the name of it. Types
Well,
of
it
flu.
varies from year to year based on what they
Right.
anticipate
There
the
are
flu is going to
several.
look like that year, which
Exactly.
they may be right or they may be a little bit off the mark.
My point being is that there are several variants included in that one shot.
Yes.
What we have right now is only basically two variants right now, and maybe a third one will be coming along. Our problem is, and what people forget, is that this COVID-19, even though we're into year number 2, is still new in the science world. There still isn't enough data. There still isn't enough collected information. And we haven't gone enough time in order to be able to create a vaccination that's going to cover everything, or at least most of these variants that are coming out. You got to remember, and I hate to say this, that the only way this is going to happen is through time, 3, 4, 5 years, and then we'll probably have this in check.
Well, I am in touch with an assistant professor or associate professor at Harvard at the School of Medicine, Public Health, who is an epidemiologist, who suggests that the real answer, and he made this suggestion before this new variant was discovered in South Africa, but it may hold true when it comes to this as well. And I'm hoping to bring him on to discuss this at greater length. I've invited him. But what he is suggesting is the actual answer to this is not vaccines. What? I thought, what are you talking about? He thinks that instead of people getting vaccinated, we should all be provided with rapid testing kits that we use every 4 days. Swab, stick it in a receptacle. It's sort of like a pregnancy test. You wait to see what color it turns to determine whether you have COVID or not. And if you're, clear to go, you go out and enjoy life and you go to work. But if you see that you are COVID positive, the hope is that the majority of people will then do the responsible thing and self-quarantine, even if they are asymptomatic, so they do not spread the virus. And that way, he claims he claimed in September that if we did that then, it would be safe in our society to be unvaccinated and congregate with family members by Christmas. I want to bring him on to expand upon that because it's an interesting concept, and it would perhaps resolve the fears that a lot of people in our society have about the possible side effects to the vaccines. Interesting suggestion from a scientist, not from some, whacked out person on the internet who doesn't know what they're talking about.
Well, there are a lot of speculations and conspiracies and whatnot going on social media that really confuse people a lot, and that's not good. But I'll tell you, this idea that you propose, that this professor proposes, I'm not really sure. I mean, what comes to mind right now is you say test every 4 days. I mean, okay, so you do the test. And what if the test turns, what if in between tests, let's say after you've tested and the day after you get infected, and only 3 days later you find out that you're infected, those are 3 days that you've been in contact with people thinking that you're not infected, but you're really spreading it.
I don't know. I don't know the science enough to be able to answer that, but he does. And if he comes on, I will be sure to ask him that question.
That would be a good question, absolutely. But we'll find out.
Yeah, we're going to end it here. This was really a test. This is only a test. If it had been an actual alert, all those tones would be going off that you get on your radio and television.
You're such a dramatizer,
Franco, thank you for helping with this test for those who joined late.
You're welcome.
I am doing this on my iPhone because I very much want to go out in the field and interview people on location. COVID, giving me permission to do so. I don't know. I may just have a short window of opportunity now that I can do that. But that's who I am. I really thrive, at least internally. I don't know about professionally, when I'm out doing interviews in the field as opposed to remotely. It's great that we can do this remotely. If we're back to isolation, I will, of course, embrace this again and continue to embrace it even now. But I want the opportunity to go out there in the field and do it. So in order to do that, I wanted to test this software on my iPhone. We had a stumble at first, but I guess it seems to be working now. I'm going to go back to social media to see how you guys are seeing it. And until we're back with a real interview, I thank Boaz, and to the rest of you, I say peace out.